Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the parent-child and the grandparent-grandchild real property transfer that Proposition 19 is changing. And so let's get right to it. So what happens, in fact, I already received a couple of phone calls from clients. Let me go back here. Where they have a parent who is living in the house. It's a primary residence. This transfer has to do with real property. The parent is, their health is failing. So they're looking at the house as possibly getting some money out of it to help with the parent's care. And the parent being on fixed income is not qualifying. So the question was, with this Proposition 19, with this real property transfer that's coming up and the possible increase in property taxes, Dad wants to go ahead and put me on title so that we can now both qualify for the loan. We can get some money out. And on the surface, it sounded like a good idea because we have some opportunity now to keep those property taxes low. So especially if a principal residence, we're thinking that the child would now take it as a principal residence. So what are our options? So this Proposition 19 has to do with principal residence. It has to do with family homes and farms. That's a big one in Orange County. And so the property assessed value plus $1 million is the exclusion, is the $1 million exclusion on the principal residence. But, and the exemption you can file within 1 year. So we can continue that $1 million exemption on the principal residence assessed value of up to $1 million. And we have a year to go ahead and file that. The important date, it's different than what Chris was talking about. This is on any transfers after February 16th of 2021. So this section of Proposition 19 goes into effect on February 16th of this year. But wait, there's more. There's other taxes besides property taxes. So don't have everybody rush out and start to title everything into their kids' names just to save on the property taxes that may reassess on February 16th. So we always like to plan. We always like to know what the end plan is so that we can make the best decisions today that will affect our taxes going forward. So let's break it down on a couple of examples. Let's say that you purchased, I should say the parent purchased a home in Rancho Santa Margarita. They originally purchased it back a number of years ago when the property was $150,000. So that $150,000 is the parent's basis on that home in Rancho Santa Margarita. Today's fair market value is $750,000, and their assessed value, they're paying property taxes based on $250,000. So let's look at taking those numbers. Let's look at a couple of examples. Let's say that the parent dies and the child is the beneficiary of the home, and they decide that they really like living in Rancho Santa Margarita, so they're going to keep that as their primary residence. Well, the fair market value is currently $750,000. So that value is less than the $1 million exclusion. So what happens to their property tax? Absolutely nothing. So for this particular parent-child transfer, there's really no reason to rush out and go ahead and make that adjustment right now because their property tax would not be adjusted. It would maintain that same basis as the parent had, the same assessed value as what the parent is currently paying. But let's say we went ahead and we transferred the title to the child during their lifetime and before February 16th. This is what we were talking about with my client who called. They were talking about, let's transfer the title to the daughter now before February 16th to keep that property tax value lower. But what happens when the parent dies and the child decides not to move into the house. So the child is not making this their primary residence. So the child decides to sell the house because they're not going to live in it. So the child is now going to pay $90,000 in federal capital gains tax. And how did I come to that? So they had gone ahead, let's say the parent went ahead and they transferred title of the house to the child. So the child actually receives the basis that the parent paid on that Rancho Santa Margarita house of $150,000, and they sell it now at the fair market value of $750,000. So the difference between their basis and what they sell it for is $600,000, and capital gains is 15%. So they are going to pay $90,000 in taxes because they wanted to save property taxes. And when you do the math on that, that's actually 36 years worth of property taxes that they could have paid instead of transferring the title right now. So all that to say, it depends, and that's kind of the term we always use in taxes. It depends. It depends on what the end game is. It depends on what's going to happen with the house. It's going to depend on what's going to happen with the property. Let's use another example. I have another client who is their parents have a beach house. They actually purchased this home back in the day when it was just $250,000, and they've done very well. The fair market value is now worth $2.5 million. They're paying property taxes on the assessed value of $350,000. And so we are not going to transfer title of the house. We're going to leave it in the name of the parents. So child moves into it, right? Even though they didn't transfer it into their name during the lifetime of the parent. But the child, upon death of the parent, they move in, they make it their primary residence. So now what is their property tax value? Well, it's the $2.5 million current, fair market value, less the assessed value, less the $1 million exclusion because it's their primary residence. So they're going to pay property taxes on the $1,150,000, which is an annual property tax of $11,500. Personally, I would not mind receiving a $2.5 million beach house for $11,500 a year. But that's just me. Let's say they take that beach house and they keep it as a rental. They decide not to move into it. So the property tax, of course, would not get the exclusion. So they would have that property tax of $25,000. Again, not too bad. If you have beach house, I'm thinking you could probably get rental income in excess of $20,000 for the year. Let's say the child decides to sell the beach house at the time of death. So now we've sold the beach house for $2.5 million because they did not transfer the title before February 15th during the lifetime of the parent. They will get that step up in basis when the parent dies. So the value of that beach house, their basis is now $2.5 million. They sell it for $2.5 million, and they actually pay zero capital gains tax. So sometimes it makes sense to not respond to whatever is happening in one area of tax, depending on what you're doing and what your goal is to achieve. Fourth example, same beach house. The child decides to sell the beach house at the time of death. But in this particular example, the child, they went ahead and they transferred from the parent to the name of the child. During the lifetime of the parent, they still have sold that beach house for $2.5 million. The basis is only $250,000. So now they're going to pay capital gains taxes of $337,500. So that's the difference from between what the basis was and what they sold it for times the 15% capital gains.